So let's start with what's happening, because while the COVID-19 pandemic is sweeping the world, I believe this has also been accompanied by another epidemic, and I call it an epidemic of fear. You see, it's very hard to be afraid of an invisible threat of a minute virus. In fact, it's so small, it would take 1 million of them to cover the dot on a printed page. What's visible to us and the signs of our fear are the empty shelves in the supermarket. These are actually the visible evidence of people's fears. And it's very easy to criticise the panic buying of toilet rolls and to say it's un-Australian, but actually it comes from a very normal part of human response, especially to a perceived threat. Now, we have an inbuilt survival mechanism known as fear, and without this fear, we wouldn't have survived over the millennia as a human race and evolved to the way we are today. But at the same time, our current anxiety, stress, and other disturbing emotions are no longer generated from the wild beasts of the jungle, but from the wild thoughts of our minds. So you might like to think about that. But what's important about this primitive emotion is that because it's a lifesaver, we should understand it better. But what we can't do is eliminate it. We can't just turn off our feelings, because that would be trying to stop people being human beings. So if we can't stop it, what can we do? Well, mostly I think we need to understand it. We need to know that it's a natural life-preserving force in human beings, and we need to deal with it. And of course, as we know, fear can quickly turn into anxiety, frustration, sometimes greed, anger, and or violence. But what's important to know is that anyone in the grip of any of these emotions, in fact any strong emotion at all, is not going to be thinking calmly or rationally. Hence the panic and even the conflict that we've seen in the supermarkets. So I really want to focus on our mental health in a time of crisis, which is now. And I'm thinking about it as a society, not just the individual. Because we're social beings, we spend a lot of time together, we communicate, and the impact we have on each other, and they have on us, really affects our mental health. John Donne said, "No man is an island." So when we have the situation of crisis proportions, then we have more impact upon each other, and even with social isolation, we are still influencing each other. So let's look at some ways that we can apply psychological knowledge in a practical and helpful way. And the very first thing I'm going to suggest is that you be a good listener. Easier said than done, I might say, and I'll give you some few tips on this. The city of Ballarat has launched a Be Kind Ballarat, and it suggests you be a good listener. And after 40 years of being a counsellor, I have often experienced the power of actually listening. And sometimes a new client will surprise me, because at the end of their 1 hour session, the first session, they say, "Oh, it's been so helpful, Sam." And really, mostly I've just been there listening. So it can be a very powerful force for good and for connection. So let's look about how to do listening in a practical way. And let's start with what doesn't help. Because we want to help someone, we want to help them feel better. But if we say, "Calm down and relax, it will soon be better," or "It's not really as bad as that," or perhaps "You'll feel better tomorrow." And what happens there is that we've actually fallen into a trap. We've fallen into a trap of trying to get an emotional person to calm down by thinking rationally. But they can't, and so they won't. So an alternative is to show understanding and interest in the person. This is also called empathy, by the way. So you might say to them, depending on what they were saying, "I can hear that you're really worried about this." It may not be worried, it may be some other emotion, but whatever it is that you have noticed and reflected back to them what you can see about their emotional state. And you might ask them a question like, well, what do you think might happen? What's your worst fear? But sometimes the best question is there something you'd like me to do? Because most of us want to jump in and do something helpful for a person, and much better to be led by the person you're trying to help and hear their suggestions rather than what you think would be a good idea. And after all that, sometimes just to be there, whether it's on a Skype call or just an ordinary telephone call, just to be there, to be supportive and actually say nothing. Sometimes silence can be very supportive. So that's all about listening, and it's a skill that you can develop, and it has its challenges, as I hope I've made clear. Now, the second thing that we really want to do in order to support people is reach out. Many of us aren't going out much at all. I'm in the age group that's more vulnerable, so I'm definitely staying home. But that doesn't stop me reaching out and calling people by telephone, by Skype, by Zoom, all sorts of ways that we have these days. So what really makes a difference is to know that someone is communicating with you, or you're communicating with someone. And maybe it's an opportunity to re-establish some old friendships and connections that maybe you haven't talked to someone for a year. Well, what a great excuse. I thought I'd call you up today because we're both in this situation with COVID-19, and I really wondered how you were getting on. And I think you could easily make someone's day. Give it a go, why not? Now, the third thing I wanted to suggest is an unusual situation that so many of us are now working from home. And so the third thing I want to suggest is some tips for working at home. And I recently came across a very good book. It's called Take Control of Working from Home Temporarily. And you can Google it or look it up if you want to, and you can download it from the internet, and it is free and gratis. And it's got lots of useful tips about working from home, because it feels very different. Home is home and work is work, and for most of us they're separate locations, and they not only look different and are different, but they feel different. So one of the most important tips is, if you're going to work from home, you create your own workspace, your own desk, as I am in now, in my home, and make it nice. If you want a pot plant there that perhaps you wouldn't normally have, put it there, and think of it as your workplace. And when you actually, by maintaining this as a separate workplace, you go to work. You make an out of the family area and into a spare room or the bedroom or whatever you set aside, and you go to work. And you do your work, and when you take a break, you go out back into the home and take a break. So you go to work and you come home from work in a very weird way, but parallel what you would do in a normal situation. That's to say, normal situation of going to work somewhere else. And one of the tips I'll read from the book now is about looking after yourself, because most of us working from home, we're in front of a computer or an iPad or a mobile, and we're sitting down for a long time. So the tip is stand up, stretch, and walk around. If you need to go outside, just go and walk in the garden, round the house, and come back, because physically you need to move. And even a lovely idea here is have solo dance parties. So I could just be dancing about here, but in actual reality I'd need to get up and do it properly. But also you can do things like yoga or meditate, or just take a break and do something totally different. This is really about looking after yourself in this strange and weird new normal, as some people are calling it right now. So let me just summarize what I've covered. First of all, we're in a very difficult situation, a new novel situation which is threatening to many people and parts of our lives. And so there's a lot of fear and related emotions going along. So the three things that you can do is basically be a good listener, which, as I said before, is a bit of a challenge. Reach out to people. Even though you can't go and visit them in their homes, reach out by phone or Skype or whatever other means that you can contact them. And thirdly is look after yourself working from home, as so many people are now. So that's what I wanted to tell you today. I hope you can go well during this time of crisis, and we'll come out the other side, and maybe we'll be a bit wiser about a few things than we were at the beginning. Thank you, Lynn, for having me here and
Thank you, Sam.
giving these ideas.
That's great. That's given people a lot of really good ideas and things to take away, thoughts to reflect on. So I've got some questions now from people who have joined this webinar. One from Chris. People are getting on each other's nerves in our household. My wife and I are living at our in-laws and have 2 children, 6 and 5. So the elderly parents in particular are finding it difficult to get out of the house easily. So that's having 3 generations in the one house. What suggestions would you have for that, Sam?
Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Yes, a lot of people are finding their living situation. It suddenly feels very crowded because even though it was crowded to start with, if you get out regularly, then you take a break and you come back later. And this is something you can't do now. So it's good for some people particularly the introverts, people who like their own company, is to politely but firmly say, I just need a bit of me time, and you disappear off into your bedroom and read a book or do whatever you need to do without upsetting the other people in the house. But of course I notice some people are being very innovative with Easter coming up. Some people are, because they can't go out for their Easter break, they're camping in their own garden, which I think is a wonderful idea, and certainly will get the kids very involved and interested, and they can actually feel like it's a bit of a holiday, even if it is in your own backyard.
Yes, it's challenging, isn't it? Because every generation will need slightly different, have slightly different needs.
Absolutely, yes.
I had a question too from Jared. Any specific listening activities, especially for young children?
Well, children are in some ways not very different from adults in the sense they like to be listened to, they like to be understood. They like to feel that someone's taking them seriously and hearing what they're saying. And especially with things going on now, because they can see that the grown-ups aren't quite the same as they used to be. Things are different. And if they ask questions about it, please give them honest answers. 99% of the time, kids can really handle the truth, and they're better off knowing. Otherwise, they wonder, and then it can worry them and cause problems later on. So I would say with kids, the most important thing is listen to what they say and answer their questions as truthfully as you can.
And Jared has followed that up with how about having children, ideas for getting children to encourage them to open up. So, yes, listen to them when they're telling you things, but how do you get them to open up to you if they're feeling a bit stressed?
Well, I'm going to answer that question backwards, if you like, because it's what is it that stops them opening up? Because kids normally want to open up. They want to communicate. They want to be understood. They want to relate to people in their lives, particularly parents and teachers. And so just be aware of things that might stop them opening up. And that is if you dismiss what they say or you criticize them in a way that they feel, oh, that wasn't the right thing to say, or, Daddy didn't like me asking that question, and they'll then withdraw. So the best thing is to be open and honest, listen to their questions, and accept them all, even if the question doesn't seem to be very how shall I put it, very sensible or relevant, it is for the kid who's asked it. So just take it seriously and give the best answer you can.
And one from Vera. Fear is such a strong energy, and whilst an important function, it can also be debilitating and make matters worse. So when these negative thoughts come up, and when fear is, expressed in the body, would it help to acknowledge those thoughts briefly, but then move on to pleasant and happy thoughts?
Yes, the real thing is that you can't just turn them off and ignore them like they never happened. So you need to do something with them. Now, address them in a straightforward way and talk about them if you can. But some people really get a lot of benefit out of a bit of physical energy. So whether it's digging in the garden, or going for a walk, we're still allowed to go out and have some exercise. So that's often very good for people who are emotional, because as you exercise, you get the blood pumping and you use up that adrenaline, and that helps to calm you down emotionally. Not permanently, but certainly for the time being.
Yes, that's right. And I think too, it's not a matter of moving on too quickly. It's to acknowledge. To acknowledge them is to allow them to, be expressed or hear them in your own mind, and to avoid just burying thoughts, I suppose, burying our thoughts.
Yes, I could just add a comment there, Len. We tend to think of, certain emotions as good and other emotions as bad, but in fact they're all natural. But some of us are more comfortable or uncomfortable, as the case may be, and therefore we welcome them or we try and banish them. And it's the banishment that doesn't work. We need to take them on board. Well, this is how I'm feeling. Maybe I need to talk about it, or just think about why I'm feeling this way. Because especially with fear, the fear we feel because we're in real danger, which is our, evolutionary lifesaver, is not the same fear that we have as about, how am I going to pay the electricity bill? It's not that it's not real that you have to pay the electricity bill, but it's not quite the same thing as, a saber-toothed tiger coming to devour you. Although for some people it ends up feeling rather similar.
Yes, that's why in these set of webinars we'll be providing some mindful resources for people, because they are skills that we need to develop. And I have a question from Karen.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi Sam, what if you're the calm, compassionate person that everyone wants to reach out to? Any tips on how to place limits that whilst still being caring?
Yes, well, if anything, that's a bit easier now, because people are contacting me and probably Karen too and other people via phone or Skype and so on, and just be very straightforward about what you can handle and what you can't. So if someone is calling you, left a message, let's say, a text message saying, I need to speak to you, and it's pretty urgent, and rather than you get in a panic and say, oh my God, I better call them back quickly, take a few deep breaths, think about what you can do and can't do, and then maybe send a text message back and say, how about you call me at 2 o'clock this afternoon? It'll be a good time to talk because I'll be free. And so manage it yourself rather than feel overwhelmed by other people's demands.
I read a study once which did a major research on the most compassionate people around the world, and one of their attributes was the ability to set boundaries, so that you do support yourself and then are able to support others. Yeah.
Yes. How can you support anyone if you can't support yourself? You'll be in a too critical and weak condition to do anything useful at all. So it's not selfish, it's actually good common sense to look after yourself.
Yes, to support ourselves. So thank you, Sam. I think they were the main questions that people had asked. So we're going to, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to finish each of these webinars with a meditation or breathing exercise. And for this first webinar, I wanted to take people through a simple breathing exercise that you can use every day. It's called the 4-2-4 breathing. And we know that controlled and conscious breathing is good for us because it brings us into our bodies, takes us out of our worrying minds, and importantly soothes our nervous system. So we're going to be breathing in for 4, out for 2, holding for 2, and breathing out for 4. And to prepare for our breathing, we need to ensure that our shoulders are down and back, that we're opening up our lungs, giving our lungs a lot of breathing room in to get that air right down into our chest. We want to be grounded, so we want our feet flat on the floor, making sure that our arms or legs aren't crossed. Just really sitting back, feeling the back of the chair, that our spines are straight. And either looking down or closing our eyes, really just to take that peripheral distraction away from us. Now we're going to breathe in through our nose for 4, we're going to hold for 2, and then breathe out either through our nose or our mouth. We're going to do 4 rounds of that. So taking a deep breath in, 3, 4, holding for 2, and breathing out, deep breath out for 3, 4. Breathing in for 4 through our nose, holding for 2, and breathing out through nose or mouth. Breathing in for 4, 4, holding for 2, and breathing out for 4. And on the last round, really make sure that you're breathing right down into your belly. Sometimes when we're stressed, we can keep our breath very shallow. We want to really take it down into our bellies. So breathing in and hold, and really breathing out and relaxing. So thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to you joining us all next week, where the speaker will be the renowned social scientist Hugh Mackay. Hugh will speak to us about physical, not social distancing, creating communities in a time of isolation. So we very much look forward to that. If you want to see information about the work of Compassionate Ballarat, please visit our webpage at compassionateballarat.com.au. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm feeling very relaxed.
Yeah.